Hello everyone and welcome to this chapter dedicated to the main lines of the fantasy variation, in particular the line with the third move e6 and then black plays bishop to b4. So the starting moves are the Caro, Kann, we play f3 and here black goes for e6, we play knight c3 and here black goes for the most principled continuation, which is the move bishop b4. And this move might seem, a little bit strange. Maybe it's like a sort of resembling a win over French, but this actually is connected with a very concrete idea. Black is actually threatening to take on e4 and go queen h4, something like this. And then after pawn takes queen h4, and whoopsie, we're going to be having some issues with that pawn on e4. With that being said, I think now we kind of understand the idea behind black's setup. But the nice point about this line is that we can actually ignore it for the moment, because I really like to go for the pawn sacrifice variation here. We're going to be gambiting the e4 pawn by playing a3. And really, one of my favorite lines in this fantasy opening is after the main line, the main move, bishop takes on c3, pawn takes, d takes on e4. And one of the key pieces of this whole course that you just got is this knight h3 move, which I think it's very unique, sort of rare, and it has a super really nice value when it comes to both the surprise value and also as it's posing like a lot of practical problems for our opponent. But before we will be going for this very fun variations upcoming with knight to h3, first we have to take a look on what happens if black after a3 decides to keep the bishop with bishop a5, because although this is not really that popular, it still gets played some of the times, and we have to be prepared for it. But again, I really expect most of your opponents to go for bishop takes c3, but just in case, we need to be prepared. Oh, to bishop a5 as well. So here, what you really need to remember is that I really like to go for this slightly less popular option. There are anyways very few games with this position in practice. I've seen like maybe 20 games with this, only 5 games with bishop to d3. And the point of this move is that it is actually connected with another pawn sacrifice, like the knight h3 line. We really like to sacrifice pawns in these openings. And we're allowing black to take on e4 and then pick up the d4 pawn. But these lines are generally giving white very nice development, and we can get a very nice initiative, as you will see in the upcoming lines. The volume of theory that I gave in this course is quite large, and again, it's going to be like kind of hard to try to memorize all the lines, and even with this fact that there are not so many games with this opening, you don't necessarily have to learn everything by heart. Just by looking at the lines, I think you get a very good idea of how the game should go in general. And, just by seeing the bigger picture, I think you should be good to go. And, by just knowing some of the key ideas, you will be able to find the right moves on your own. And I just wanted to make a quick disclaimer to not feel overwhelmed by the amount of variations appearing after bishop to a5, because I just gave them just in case this position becomes more popular. But we need some more time and some more games from here, because after bishop to d3, taking on e4 is actually a novelty. At least there are no games in the live over the board database with it. And although this actually might look quite tempting for a lot of people because black is taking on d4. But you'll see, this is kind of a thematic gambit that we usually like to play in the fantasy when we get the chance. Because now we can play knight f3, develop our knight with tempo. Notice that usually we had this sort of problem in the fantasy that the knight has to go on h3 and then relocate it via maybe f2, sometimes jumping to g5. But here we get it in one move on the natural square by even gaining a tempo. So it's all looking pretty nice. Here black has a choice between taking the second pawn with bishop c3 or playing queen d8. If black goes queen to d8, I really like to play e5, making sure that this bishop is remaining locked on c8. And at some point, once we castle, we will also have some knight e4 ideas to bring the knight into the attack. So here, if black plays knight e7, we can castle. And here, already a very quick way to lose the game for black would be to go for short castle, looking very natural, but allowing the Greek gift after bishop takes on h7, king takes. We can go knight g5, and after king j, queen h5. We're simply going to mate black in a few moves with queen h7. So this is no good for black, and black can also try to play h6 here, avoiding the immediate Greek gift. But we can play knight e4 after bishop to c7, stopping knight d6 ideas. We can just play queen e1, preparing to either bring the queen to g3 or to h4, with very nice attacking ideas on the king side. So I feel like this bishop combined with this knight, this bishop also looking to that h6 pawn, it's gonna give black a really hard time castling. So I think we can stop here with the analysis and can move on to after e5. Black has another plan. Instead of knight e7, black can try to play knight to d7, and we can simply castle short here, setting up a trap, because if black goes for the rather tempting knight takes on e5, looks like black has a small tactical trick to win a pawn, but we can just take, and after queen d4, king h1, queen takes on e5. Black is technically up 2 pawns, but we get really nice development after the move bishop to f4, attacking the queen. For example, queen f6 is really bad because of knight e4, and the knight is going to land on d6 next with a winning position for white. And after queen to d4, we have knight b5, super strong move, with the idea that if pawn takes, can take with the bishop, and then the queen is going to be hanging on d4. And now black is simply lost because the knight is going to come to d6 on the next move. So this, I think, is again a very nice illustration of how bad can it go for black if he plays greedy. And after short castle, bishop to c7 is a little bit of a better move, keeping an eye on the e5 pawn. But we can simply ignore it, play bishop to e3, because again knight takes on e5 is not the smartest move, because we can just take, and after bishop takes, have queen h5, hitting both the e5 bishop and the f7 pawn. And after queen to c7, we have again another surprising tactic, but this works very well. We can just play knight to b5. And the main idea is that pawn takes on b5, can take with the bishop. Please notice that black is unable to play bishop to d7, because that will interfere with the queen on the 7th rank, and then we will be able to pick up the f7 pawn with check. So black has to make this ugly king move, but here we have another brilliant move. We have rook takes on f7, and after queen takes, we can play bishop to c5. Only move that black has, knight e7, but here we can just collect the bishop, and we're ready to play rook f1 onto the next move with a completely winning position. Black can try to sidestep it with king to g8, but after the killer queen c7, black is simply lost, because we are threatening both the e7 knight, and more so queen to d8 with a completely winning position. So that's pretty much it about this knight takes on e5 move. So black can also not take the pawn and play knight to e7, but after this we're going to be playing queen e2, simply developing our queen and making room for the rook to come to the open file. Again, we have knight takes on e5, but here we can simply develop our rook, play rook d1, and black has a choice between queen d6 or knight takes on d3. If black takes, we're going to be taking with the rook, activating it, and after knight d5, we have a very strong move. We can go knight g5, attacking the f7 square, and if black goes for castle, we have this super nice queen h5, and this is usually a very nice motive, because black is unable to defend both f7 and h7. So white is again completely winning. If black goes queen d6 here, with the idea to take on f3, followed by queen takes on h2, this is kind of a tricky move, but we have a very strong reply here. We can simply play g3, and now black's battery has been completely shut down, and black can try to take to play knight d5, after which we can take it, and already c takes on d5 would be quite a bad mistake, because we can just take on e5, play bishop to b5, and all of a sudden black is really not having a good response to this check, because bishop to d7 allows bishop takes, and then we can pick up the f7 pawn with a completely winning position. And after knight takes d5, if black goes pawn takes on d5, I mean the pawn from the e file, we're going to be playing bishop to d4, pinning the knight, only move f6, can take on e5, increase the pressure on the pawn with rook e1. And after bishop e6, have this really nice queen h5. Black has nothing better than king d7. Now we can take on e5. And despite the fact that we are down a pawn, I think we still have very good compensation and very good winning chances because the enemy king is in the middle of the board. It's really hard to play in this type of situations. So that should pretty much be it about queen d8. Now we can move on and focus on what's happening if black does go for the greedy bishop takes on c3. So if bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes on c3, we're going to be playing bishop to d2. And after queen c5, the idea is to play queen e2, preparing multiple ideas such as bishop b4 and then castle long. And I really just want you to pause for a second and think about this position. Again, we're going to be looking at a bunch of illustrative lines, but again, like, you don't really need to remember everything by heart, as long as you kind of understand that you can afford to give up the pawns like this. Just look at the development that you get. You have 3 pieces developed, a queen here that you can still attack and gain a couple of tempes, and you're ready to castle in the next move. This king is in the center. The black is simply lacking a lot of stuff here. Like, he has no development, and we're gonna be getting the initiative quite quickly. Yes, I get it. If you're not like very comfortable playing for the initiative, might look a little bit scary to play this position, but this is why we're gonna be looking on the illustrative lines. But again, if you feel like comfortable playing down few pawns, personally, I really like to play in these situations. But yeah, still, I think only if you get to this point, I think you have very good odds of finding good moves on your own at the chessboard. So after queen to e2, I've covered 4 moves here for black. Again, like, this position is completely fresh. I just tried to put myself in black's shoes and try to come up with some moves. So again, this is not like really, can't really give you too many insights that this is gonna be played, or I face this a lot. This is a new position, but yeah, we're gonna just try to see multiple continuations that black has. So after queen b6, we can just castle with very nice compensation. The play could continue like knight d7. We're going to be activating the rook via the e file, knight f6, and now bishop to b4 is very strong, keeping the enemy king in the center. Black can either go c5 or e5. If e5, we can just play bishop to c4, activating the bishop, and after c5, bishop to c3. If queen c7, for example, defending the e5 pawn, can just play knight g5, and after the castle short, we have a very thematic sacrifice for this line. Can take on f7 twice, and after king takes, we have the powerful g4. And yes, we have invested 2 minors for the rook. This is usually like not the best trade, but look at black's pieces. Black is unable to bring these 2 pieces in the game. We're ready to play g5, and yeah, just crush black. We have queen c4 ideas. We have ideas of bringing the queen via the f file. So white is just completely winning here. Instead of queen c7, black can also just ignore the e5 pawn and castle. But here, we're not going to be taking it, but we're going to be implementing the same tactic. We're going to be playing knight g5, with the idea that h6 runs into the same knight f7. And if rook f7, here it's a little bit more precise to not capture immediately on f7, because that's not running anywhere. But we can start with g4. And after knight f8, we can again, there's no need to rush with bishop f7. Can pick up the e5 pawn, and in case black tries to save the rook with bishop e6, we have this super strong rook d6 move, attacking the enemy queen. Bishop takes c4 is forced in order to not lose material. Queen takes on c4, and after queen a5, we can just collect on f6 twice, and yeah, white is completely winning, because we are ready to pick up this full rook onto the next move. So that's pretty much it about e5. Another very logical move that black has here is to play c5 and lock, I mean not really lock, but block our bishop. So black is trying to castle. And after bishop to c3, if black plays the supernatural castle, we already have a very nice combo. We can play e5, the knight e5. We can just go for the greedy with bishop takes on a7. The idea that after king takes, we're going to be playing knight g5. And if black goes for the passive king g8, we're going to be mating with queen to h5. And if black tries to go with the king up, we're going to be playing queen e4, super precise. And after king takes, bishop d2, king h5. This is just the first mate. After queen to h3. And if black tries king to h6 instead, that is again going to be leading to a checkmate after the precise rook d3, bringing the rook over, and after king takes, you play rook g3, king h6, rook h3. Again, it's just a checkmate with checks. So just keep in mind this idea that, this can come really unexpected by black. Black could, desperately try to castle and get a playable position. But after that, simply after e5, knight e5, bishop takes an a7. Black is just lost without even getting the chance to play a normal game. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it about c5. And we can move on to some other moves in this position, such as knight f6, for example. I think this is quite normal looking. But again, it allows a super strong reaction by white. You can just play e5, tag the knight, the knight e5, have c4, tagging the d5 knight, the knight e7. Bishop b4 is really strong, kicking the queen. And after queen d6, bishop d6 is a super nice move here. Because keep in mind, c5 could get played, and then black is, getting our pieces slightly pushed back. But after bishop d6, the bishop is just really annoying. Black is unable to castle because the e7 knight will drop. And this is overall just very unpleasant for black. Keep in mind that rook b1 is also very annoying. And white is just doing very well here. So instead of knight f6, black could try to develop the knight without allowing this e5 with tempo by playing knight to e7. But then again, we're going to be playing bishop b4 with the idea that after queen b6, we're ready to castle long. And if black goes t5, similar lines to what we've just seen, playing bishop c3, hitting the g7 pawn, so black castles, play rook f1, and after knight b to c6, we have again the same typical idea, playing knight g5, and if h6 comes, we are ready to sack on f7, and after rook takes, we can take, play queen f3. Black has to either go to g8 or e8. If king e8, the king is still not running anywhere, because we can take on g7, and if knight to d4 happens, we can go queen f8, king d7, bishop f6, attacking the e7 knight. Knight moves to c6. But now after e5, this is simply winning for us, because we are threatening queen to d6 followed by bishop g6 with a winning position. So instead of king e8, black would also go king to g8, but then rook f1, and black is just unable to defend against our threats. Simple threat is queen f7 followed by queen takes with mate, so knight d4, blocking the bishop. Could be tried, but after queen f8, rook f7, there's no way for black to defend against the threat of queen takes on g7. So white is completely winning. And instead of knight e7, another move that I think black can try to stop this seemingly annoying bishop b4 move is to play a5 here. But then we can switch to the e5 move. After knight d7, we can play c4. Controlling the d5 square, preparing some bishop e3 ideas. Black can play b6, but after bishop e3, queen goes to e7. A really strong move here would be to just play g4, and main idea is that we're stopping this knight to get to f5. And for example, if black plays knight h6, the idea is not to push g5, because that would allow knight f5, but we're going to be playing h3, just making sure that this knight is stuck on h6. And after castles, we can castle. You play queen c2 next. Then black is going to be having a very hard time defending the h7 pawn, because g6 would simply drop the h6 knight. So again, this is giving white a very nice compensation. If after g4, black plays bishop to b7, we can play castles. And after castle long by black, you can just play rook b1 with a lasting initiative over the queen side. So I think that should sum things up for this lines where black goes greedy and takes the pawn. As I said, this is very fresh territory, and after d takes on e4, f takes on e4, there are no practical games. There are no over-the-board games in the database. So again, it's really hard to predict what's going to happen, but hopefully you got a good idea of how the lines could potentially go, and how big the attacking potential is for white when black does go greedy and picks up a lot of material in the opening while neglecting development. So after bishop d3, nevertheless, black is not forced to go for it, and instead can try to play also a developing move, which is knight to e7. But after knight to e7, it's really important to play bishop d2, breaking the pin. And here, again, black has a choice. I've covered, again, it's possible for black to take on e4 and then collect on d4, which we're going to be covering in a minute. But first, we're going to be looking on short castle. Here we're going to be playing e5. And in this type of position, you will see like a lot of very similar positions to the French defense. The only difference is that we get a little bit of an improved version compared to the knight c3 main lines. And here after e5, black has a choice between knight f5 or bishop b6. After bishop b6, again, there's no need to go for the, I would say, solid knight c2 e2, because as you've seen, usually in this repertoire, we like to get our knight to e2 and then play f4, knight f3, play c3, defend everything. Here we have even a better move. We can just push f4 with the idea that bishop takes on d4 has a very nice refutation. We can just take on h7. This is again a very surprising Greek, but it all works very well because after king takes, king go check, king j8, knight f3. And this is the big point. Now we're attacking the bishop and also threatening knight g5. So we are at least winning the piece. For example, after g6, queen h3, king g7, we can just collect the bishop and be much better. And if black does take on c3, as you are probably wondering, we're going to be playing knight g5, and after bishop takes, king takes, rook e8, take on f7, king h8. Super important move. We can play g4, stopping any knight f5 ideas. And then the plan is to just lift the rook to the third rank, get the rook to h3, and that will simply lead to a checkmate. So black doesn't really have anything to do. Just look at its pieces, completely stuck on the queen side, not really being able to participate in the game. So what good is to be up 2 minors when they are not in the game, right? I think this is quite an important lesson. And instead of this taking, black could also not take and play the move knight f5, but after knight f5, we're ready to eliminate it with bishop takes, play knight f3. And here, usually when you have this kind of pawn structure, you need to get the knight on e6, because the knight is really the best blockading piece, and a way for black to do that is to play knight a6, after knight e2, knight e7, bishop e3. Black is finally getting the knight to e6, but you can still play queen d2, and white is keeping a very nice edge. You can continue with castles, push h3, g4, with a very nice position for white, despite black having a pretty solid knight on e6. So I think that's pretty much it about bishop to b6. If after e5 black goes for the immediate knight f5, we can just get rid of it. This looks a little bit similar to what we've just said. It's just a little bit different because the bishop is not on b6 yet. But we're going to be implementing the same strategy. We're taking on f5. And after pawn takes, we're going to be playing knight c2, e2. Because we were kind of happy to exchange the bishop, because after the trade, queen d2, black is left with this seemingly bad French bishop. After f6, we can just take. After queen takes, looks like this knight is quite sad here on g1, but it's not going to be anymore. After knight h3, because after knight d7, this knight is coming to life. The knight is getting to f4. And again, we have very nice position because mainly the e5 square is quite weak, and we can try to maneuver our knights around it. Hopefully one day, castle should bring this knight to f4, get a rook to e1, and then occupy the outpost with knight to e5. So white has a very nice position. Also keep in mind that this bishop is really horrible. So with that being said, I think it's enough about the bishop d2 short castle line. As I said, another move would be to take on e4 here and collect on d4 in this version. But again, this is still very dangerous for black, although the character of the position is a little bit different in terms of how our attack will go. But white still has a very nice compensation, as you will see. The important starting move is to play queen h5, bring the queen over to the king side, and also hitting the a5 bishop. So after queen h5, queen to d8 is the best move for black, defending the bishop and avoiding our knight f3 move. But here e5 is very strong, making sure that black is not going to castle due to queen takes on h7 motifs. And after knight d7, we can play knight f3. If black goes for knight c5, this is the best move here. If g6, that's only creating additional weaknesses on the king side. You can just play queen h6, so knight c5. Queen g7 is a super strong move, hitting the rook. And after rook to g8, you can just take on h7. We are not afraid of knight takes on d3, because after bishop takes on c3, we we can just take it with a pawn. If black goes for the greedy queen takes on d3, we have knight g5, hitting the f7 pawn, also controlling the e4 square, and after rook f8, we are just in time with rook f1. Black has one more defensive try for f7, which is knight f5, but we can play g4, and after g4, knight has to go away, and then we can take on f7 with a winning position. So instead of this, knight c5 is a little bit better, but after knight c5, we're going to be going for the same knight g5 idea. Black can take on d3, play knight g6, but here rook f1 is again going to happen, putting pressure on f7. Black can try queen d4, hitting the e5 pawn, but we have a very strong sequence. We can take, and after queen takes, king f1, queen d4. We have an incredibly beautiful move. You can just play knight f3, allowing black to take on d3 with check, because after king g1, white is completely winning. The idea is to take on g7 on the next move, and the king is caught in the center, and our king is in a very safe spot. And if black does go and collect the rook, have this beautiful knight e5, because this one on g6 is pinned, and we can then collect this queen on d3 on the next move, with a winning position for white. And instead of taking on e4, as I said, this always gives white a very nice compensation. So just, be aware of the fact that you can go for bishop d3 in this type of lines, and it's not really a big deal if black goes for our d4 pawn, because it might look a little bit sketchy at first to just give up the pawn like that. But if you're aware of the fact that you can just sacrifice it and you get very nice compensation in the turn, I think you can have a much easier time finding the good moves over the board. So after bishop d2, the main move that I've covered here for black is to play knight to d7. But here I really like this move, and this is a little bit important. And again, if you feel like you're having problems memorizing these lines, I really recommend using the move trainer technology, because it's really helping you to understand the lines better, get a little bit deeper with the move orders, and sort of make the difference between the lines, because chess is kind of hard, and it can actually look a little bit confusing when you're seeing all of these lines, but it's really a big part of it is this concrete memorization. Yes, it's really important to understand what you're doing, but really at some point it's just really irrelevant to have a good feeling for the positions if you can't get the good the good lines in that are getting you an objective advantage. So this is really it's really important. So after knight to d7, we're going to be playing f4, as I said, preparing to develop the knight to f3. And if black plays, I think I've covered here a lot of moves for black. Black can either strike in the center, black can take on e4, black can take on c3 and then on e4, and also play bishop to b6. As I said a little bit earlier, those are quite fresh positions, so not so many games with it, so it's kind of hard to really predict what black is going to do. But we have a few over the board games from this position, and it can maybe make it easier for us to navigate. And after f4, for example, if black plays c5, you can just play e5, with the idea that taking on d4 simply be met by knight to b5. We're going to be taking this pawn, while also we're feathering some knight d6 check. If black castles, play knight f3, and after bishop takes, just take it with a queen, and after knight to c5, simply collect d4 pawn, and if bishop d7, can just get our king to safety. If black takes on d3, this is not forced, but just to give a nice example, here we like to take with a pawn, because we keep this beautiful knight here on in the center of the board, and we would be quite happy to trade queens and play the endgames, and we would love to have this scenario with good knight against bad bishop. In some endgames, even the king can come to d4 via e3, like in the old Steinitz games. So instead of this cd4, black can also go for this more aggressive looking move c4, but I think this is really dubious because it's releasing the tension in the center. Bishop f1 is very strong. There's no shame in making this move. We're just rerouting our bishop. We're going to be playing g3, bishop g2, get our knight to f3, castle, and then, we're simply going to be attacking black on the king side in the long run. So bishop f1 is very good. Castles, knight f3. Black can try to open things up with f6, but here knight e2 is very strong. If black keeps the bishop with bishop b6, we can just play c3, solidifying our center. and after knight c6, can play knight g3, making room for the bishop. Queen e8, bishop e2. Black can try to block the position with f5, but now we have a very nice maneuver. We can bring our knight to e3, after bishop d8, knight e3, b5. We can castle here. There's no need to rush with g4, but after king h1, a5, rook g1. Now that the king is very safe, we're ready to push g4 next with a very nice attacking position for white. So just keep in mind this idea. When black is blocking the this situation on the king side with f5, always going for this kind of rook g1, g4 plan is the way to break his position. So instead of bishop b6, black can also trade with bishop takes on d2. And after queen takes on d2, rook b8, can just play g3, preparing to fianchetto, b5, bishop g2, a5, can just castle short. And now we have a simple plan of going g4 and knight g3. This is a little bit typical for the closed Sicilian, only that we have a little bit more space here. Black can push b4, I can trade, open up our rook, and just play g4. Can play knight g3 with f5 ideas. Next, with a small but steady edge for white. After f4, black can also take on e4 immediately. After pawn takes, you're going to be taking. After bishop takes, queen takes. I just feel like we'll get a very nice version of the French, where after knight f6, we can just trade, play knight f3. We're going to be playing long castle, and bring the rook to e1, and the enemy bishop on c8 is quite passive. Needless to say, the damage pawn structure over the king side is going to start telling at some point, because black is struggling to find a safe place for his king. This is very nice for white. And if black goes for the other version, by taking first on c3 and then on e4, can take with a bishop, and after queen c7, hitting the f4 pawn, can just protect it with bishop to d2, and after castles, knight f3, b6, queen e2 is very strong, preparing castles long. After bishop b7, we're castling, c5. Black is getting rid of the bad bishop, but it's not really an issue since we can just take and play rook e1. And I really like this type of situations where we have the opposite castlings on, because we could continue with like king b1 is always a useful move, and also just advance with g4 and h4 on the king side. And I just feel like white's play is much quicker overall. Instead of taking, bishop b6 is what we've seen in an over-the-board game between two pretty strong players. Have knight f3. Black's idea was to break with c5. Here very strong was to play knight b5, threatening knight d6 check, so castles had to be played. White was in time with e5, threatening to go for the Greek gift, because c4 obviously allows bishop takes on h7 with a winning position. You're already familiar with this attack by now. And after e5, black has to play h6, stopping that, but again, c3 is very nice, solidifying the center. After a6, knight d6, bishop c7, can get rid of the enemy bishop, faster shot, which a much better position thanks to the extra space and the bishop pair in the game played between Johnny Hector and Akison Ralph in Halmstad 2013. So I think that should pretty much sum things up about this whole bishop to a5 variation. As I said, this is not the most popular move against a3, but I hope I managed to give you a lot of instructive lines that and possible ways of how the play could go, and you shouldn't really have a lot of issues while playing this line in your own games, even though it's hard to predict what black is really going to do. But I hope now you got a much wider understanding of how the game could potentially go. So with that being said, I think we can move on to the much more likely and the main line, bishop takes on c3. So after bishop takes on c3, we're going to be recapturing, and here black's idea is to take on e4. Otherwise, there's not much point in playing bishop b4 and then taking on c3. So we have pawn takes on e4, and here we have this really fresh idea to play knight h3. And here, black's most natural move, I would say, is to take on f3, but we'll be coming back to that as the last variation that we will be covering. So to start with, we're going to be covering e5, then we're going to be looking on what I think is the best move from objective point of view, which is queen a5 here for black. And then we are also going to be covering the move knight f6 as well. But really, after this knight h3, black has to come up with really precise play in order to get a pretty complex position. So again, I don't really feel like a lot of people would be able to find moves such as queen a5 here. And okay, maybe if you're trying to play this in like in a tournament game, and you have played this knight h3 move before, and it's in the database, so your opponent, if your opponent is preparing against this very specific line and is looking at it with an engine, then yes, he is more likely to find queen a5. But if you're playing this in online games, or let's say you're playing it for the first time in a tournament game, I think there are very small chances that then your opponent will be able to find such a precise way to equalize. Because as I said, taking on f3 is just way too natural in this position. But we will cover also the other moves, such as e5 here. And the idea with this e5 move is that it's creating a threat of bishop takes on h3. So you have to react to that. And we do so by playing the move knight to g5. Sidestepping that idea, introducing bishop c4 moves, and also preparing to take on e4 with the knight. Here, if black takes on f3, can take with a queen. And if, again, number of alternatives here, queen d5 is the main move. But black could also play something like queen to f6. After queen f6, can play queen g3. And if c takes on d4, bishop c4 is really strong, attacking the f7 pawn. And if knight h6, can play knight e4, hitting the queen. Queen e7, and this looks pretty annoying at first, pinning the knight, but we can simply play short castle. And after queen takes on e4, we have this simple rook e1, pinning the queen, winning it because of the fact that the king and the queen are on the same file. This is quite a basic tactic, but still nice to be aware of. So knight e4, black plays queen to g6, and here we will be playing knight to d6 check, and notice that black's king is now in a lot of trouble. King d7, can simply play bishop f4, despite the fact that the queens are going to get swapped, while they're still having a nice initiative. We're going to be taking with a pawn, opening up the path for the rook, and after c5, play short castle, knight c6, and now very strong move to bring the rook into the game. Rook to h5, hitting the c5 pawn. After b6, cd4, cd4, rook to g5, super strong move. g6 has to be played, but now rook d5 comes with deadly effect because knight is hanging, threatening a deadly discovery with like knight b5 or knight f7. Actually, forget about knight b5. Knight f7 is the real threat in this position. So yeah. Again, this is not like a very forced line, but I think it's a very good illustration of white's compensation. Instead, after queen takes on f3, black could also go for the normal-looking knight f6, but then you can just play bishop c4. As I said, when we get a knight to g5, bishop c4 is a big threat. And after castles, we can castle ourselves. If black takes on d4, queen g3 is super strong, with the idea to play knight takes on f7 and bishop h6. So for example, if black takes on c3, it's really important to play bishop to e3, avoid queen d4. And the idea is to play rook to d1 on the next move. So if black goes knight d7, I'm going to continue with rook to d1. And we're very close to winning here, because king continue with like queen h4, creating an immediate threat of rook takes on f6 and then mate on h7. So despite the fact that we are down 3 pawns, we are very close to winning in this position. So instead of e4, black could also play knight b to d7, but after the same queen g3, black is struggling. We're threatening to take on e5 and also play queen h4. So black does go for e4, but we play queen h4, and after this, b5 can be played. We're going to simply sidestep it with bishop a2. The idea is to play after h6, knight takes on e4, knight takes. Here we just collect the knight. And having the bishop pair in an open position with pressure on the f7 pawn is securing a very nice edge for white. So instead of knight f6, black would also play f6. This again looks interesting at first, but again, white has a very nice refutation, which is the move bishop to c4, with the idea that if you take the knight, we're going to be playing queen f7 mate. So black has to play knight h6, defending against the f7 threat. But we have a very strong queen h5. King e7, can just take on e5. If black plays queen e8, queen d1 is super strong, creating a threat of queen d6 with mate. So black has to play queen d7. Then we can take on f6. The pawn takes, play queen h5 again, and this time the knight is under attack. Black can try queen f5, but we can just take. And if queen e5, king f2, super precise, threatening rook e1. And if black takes, we can still go rook e1 with the idea that rook f8, simply take it, collect the queen, and white is up a full rook. So that's pretty much it about f6, and now we can move on to more of a tempting move for black, I would say, because a lot of the Caro Kann players really love to get into this endgame, so that's why queen d5 is quite a natural move here for a Caro Kann player. But here we're going to be playing knight e4, which is creating a very funny threat of playing bishop to c4, because the queen takes, then we go knight d6, forking the king and the queen. So black has to be very careful here, and they should probably just play f5, forcing the endgame. We're going to be playing knight e2, and we would be quite happy to see queen takes on f3 on the board, because we can take with the g pawn, and after e4, have this super strong rook g1 move, hitting the g7 pawn. So black has to either take on c3 or go g6. If takes, that doesn't really bother us, since we can play knight c4, and after king f8, we have a very strong move, a4. And although we are down 3 pawns without the queens, white is having a super strong initiative based on bishop a3 here. Black can play knight d7, but knight d6 is very strong. After knight d7, play king f2, b6 is one of the moves. If knight f6, then bishop c4 is very strong, threatening some knight f7 kind of move. And if knight to d5, has bishop a3, creating a very annoying discovery. Black has to sidestep, but after rook e1, look how dominating white's pieces are. Black can try b6, but again, rook e7 is deadly, creating a threat of rook takes on g7. And after g6, bishop c1, very clean move. We did here to bring the bishop to h6, then rook to g7. It's gonna be nasty move to come. And then, white is just completely winning. Again, none of this is really forced, but I think it's a very good illustration of white's domination. Even though we are down 3 pawns, black is unable to move anything. Simply very close to being a zugzwang. So instead of this knight f6 move, black could also go for b6 with the idea to meet bishop to a3 with c5. We can play bishop c4 instead with knight f7 ideas. And if knight f6, rook e1 is best, putting pressure on the e7 knight. And after h6, we can introduce a5, forcing black to play b5. And for example, if black does not play b5 and plays rook b8, we can just activate the rook on the 7th, and white is again like completely winning because black's pieces are stuck. And if after a5, black plays b5, we can just ignore the threat, play bishop a3, because taking allows knight c8, and after rook takes, we can collect on e7. Gonna pick up the a7 pawn, and we will still be down 2 pawns, but you can look that these pawns are not really doing anything. So even though black is up a few pawns, in reality it doesn't really matter. So white is just much better. So that's pretty much it about taking on c3. Black would also try to play the safer move, which is g6 here, defending against the threat. Or we can just take on d4, and after knight f6, king f2. This position we are only down a pawn, but still we have a very nice compensation to bishop e6. Something like knight c4 can be played. If black takes, we would be happy to collect the bishop pair, because after knight d7, you can play rook e1, king d8. a4 is again really nice. I really like this kind of moves, introducing both rook b1 ideas and possibly bishop a3 in some positions. Black can play a5, but we can go rook b1, hitting the b7 pawn with a much better position already, because we are having a lot of weak squares. Black's camp, all kinds of rook e6 ideas, can play like bishop g5 whenever we want to harass that knight. If king comes to c7, then bishop f4 will be annoying to hit the king. So white is doing very well. And instead of taking on c4, black would also go b5, hitting our knight. But then we are going to be going knight to d6, and after king d7, surprisingly, the best move is to play knight to b7. Not really that surprising now, because there are no other squares for the knight. But it's really some kind of funny move, fianchettoing the knight in black's camp. So here, black can play knight b to d7, but we can just play a4, hitting the b5 pawn, using that pawn as a hook. And after b takes on a4, the idea is to play bishop to a3 check. And after king f7, knight d6 comes, king g7. And now rook e1 is the decisive move, because black is unable to defend the bishop, and the rook will be penetrating to the 7th rank with a winning position. And after a4, black can also play the move b4, stopping our bishop a3 little idea. But then you can go bishop d2, and we're ready to pick up the pawn, because if black goes something like a5, we can just take you with the knight, because rook takes on a5 allows bishop takes on b4, hitting both the rook and the enemy king with a winning position. So yeah, this is what I mean, so you can get a better idea of it when white is just winning material. So instead of knight d7, a5 is another move that black has, but after a5, just play bishop to d2, hitting the a5 pawn, to knight b to d7. Very strong is to bring the rook first to e1, and after rook b8, now we can take on a5, hitting the c6 pawn. Black defends with rook c8. Now we are ready to put more fire into the position with c4. And yeah, white is just doing very well. If pawn takes, would be happily recapturing with the bishop, put a lot of pressure on this e6 guy. So that's pretty much it about taking on f3. So as I said, we would be quite happy to see it, because we have this really nice idea to take with the g pawn and then activate the rook. If black plays knight e7, we can simply go queen g3 now, keep the queens on the board, and putting pressure simultaneously on both e5 and g7. So black can play queen e6 here, but we have the super strong bishop c4 move, hitting a queen, and after knight e5, we can take on d5. If queen takes, then it's very good to just take on g7, rook g8, pick up the h7 pawn, since taking on g2 does not really bother us, because we can just play the simple bishop b2. There are no checks, because the knight is covering it, and we are ready to castle long on the next move, while the enemy king will be under fire. Not to mention, the sage pawn may be a queen one day, once we start pushing. So instead of queen takes on d5, black would also take with the c pawn, but after pawn takes, we can just take on g7. If black plays rook g8, collect the h7 one. If black would go for the check, this is actually only helping white, because after king d1, rook e1 is becoming a deadly threat, pinning the queen. So black would better avoid that, and after rook takes on g2, very strong to give this check first, and after queen to g8, we could grab on e5 potentially, but it's even better in my opinion to just trade queens, take on e5, and after something like knight c6, we can just defend the e5 pawn. We are up a pawn, it's true, because of the presence of the opposite colored bishops. There are some drawing tendencies, but still I feel like white should be pushing with the outside passer on the h file. So instead of knight d7, another move that black has is to take on d4 in this position. But here, again, we have a very nice move to play for the initiative. You can play bishop to c4, inviting black to swap queens. If queen e5, have the same motive with king d1, threatening rook e1 next, and black is in a lot of trouble. And if black takes, we're going to be taking with a knight, and after d takes on c3, you can play bishop to f4. This position is like a little bit similar. I mean, the ideas are similar, not really this particular position, to the scenario that could have happened in the model game between Maxim Vachilagrov and Kirill Alexeyenko, where white is giving up material, but and there is this kind of endgame where white just has the deadly initiative, despite the fact that the queens have been swapped. So there's a common theme for the line, and here it's showing really nicely that after knight f6, we can castle. Knight e4 can be met by knight g5. If black plays this b5 move, we can just sidestep with bishop a2, and after h6, can just trade, play rook e1, bishop f5. Looks like keeping everything under control. White has this super strong move g4, after bishop h7, bishop e5. White is actually completely winning because of the bishop takes on g7 threat. Despite being down 3 points, white is just completely winning in this position, as I'm repeating myself, but I really want to point that one out. So instead of all of this, as I said, this queen d5 move is kind of interesting, but you've seen that the upcoming endgames are very interesting for white because of this nice initiative that we get in this queenless middle game. So therefore, we can move on to the other lines. For example, after knight g5, black would also play the h6 move here, just making sure that our knight goes away. So we have to play knight takes on e4, and black has a choice here between f5 or knight f6. If f5, we can just play knight to g3, and if black takes on d4, bishop c4 is really important, and the enemy king is in trouble here, because if black would be to play knight f6, we can castle short. So knight d5, play rook e1, king f7, now play queen d3, hitting the f5 pawn, and after g6, we can take on d4, and yeah, we're doing very well here. You can just sidestep with the bishop, play c4, and white is much better. If after bishop c4, black takes on c3, allowing the endgame again is really in white's favor, can take on d8, play bishop f4, and after 97, we can castle 97, bring the rook into the game, very natural moves for white, and after rook 8, we have this knight h5 move, hitting the g7 pawn, and after something like knight g6, trade the pair of rooks, pick up the g7 pawn, we're ready to collect the h6 pawn on the next move as well, with a much better position for white, because you can always collect this one on c3, and white is doing very well. Instead of f5, black could also start with knight f6, but here we have a very nice move, which is queen e2, and after knight takes, taking with a queen, and after castles, simply pick up the e5 pawn, mid knight d7, bishop d3, threatening queen h7, and if f5, you can just give this check, mate king h7, with f4, defending the e5 pawn, and after knight b6, just sidestep the attack with queen d4, and white is up a pretty clean pawn, with a much better position. So with that being said, we can move on to a little bit of a more dubious move that black has here, which is he takes on d4. Here allows some really nice play for white after the move bishop to c4, hitting the f7 pawn. So you can see that we're really focusing on development here, and we don't really care about that much of the material balance. I have knight h6, pawn takes on e4. If black takes on c3, we can again go for the endgame, and bishop takes f7 is really important here, because black is unable to take out bishop because of the upcoming fork. So black would better play rook f8. We can just sidestep with bishop to a2, and after knight a6, we can pick up the h7 pawn, rook 8, can activate the bishop with check. And after king 7, bishop f4 is even more annoying. Black can try to hide on b6, but now we can bring our knight back into the game while also protecting the e4 pawn with a much better position, thanks to the bishop pair and to the fact that c3 pawn is ready to fall whenever we are going to be attacking it. So white is doing very well. After f takes on e4, black would also castle short, but here we will be playing castle short ourselves. And if black takes on c3, we can simply trade queens, take on f7, take with a bishop, king has to go to h8, develop with tempo, and white is much better, because we are ready to just push the e pawn and hopefully queen it, you know. So this is enough about the takes on c3. It's better to play c5 in this position, but again, white has a really nice attack after queen h5, because if queen a7, we can just take on f7, and obviously we cannot take with a knight because of queen takes on h7, queen takes on h7 mate, and if you take with a rook, we can take again with the rook, same motive that you cannot take it with the knight, because queen takes on h7 happens, we can take on f7, and after king takes, this is a little bit of a surprising move, but white has the time to play h4, with the idea to play bishop g5 followed by rook f1, black can try knight d7, with the idea to bring it to f6, but after bishop g5, we can just trade, and whatever black does, we will be playing rook f1 in the next move, with a completely winning position. So yeah, I think that's already more than you need to know about this e5 move. I think this is a very natural continuation for black, and you could be potentially facing it a lot. I think this is also quite popular in online games from what I've seen in the Lichess online database. This also has been played in a few over-the-board games, and it's quite logical. It looks very good, honestly, as black just opening up the position, opening up the bishop. But as you've seen, white's potential is really, really deadly here. So I would be really happy to face this line. And with that being said, we can move on to what I think is the best objective line here for black. And we're going to be diving into some more computery stuff after the move queen to a5, which is hitting the c3 pawn. And here it's important that you remember to play bishop to b2. Personally, I don't really like bishop to d2 because of e3. So just keep that in mind. I think this is also could be playable, but I just would like to avoid this. So that's why I prefer bishop to b2. And here, black has a few moves at his disposal. Taking on f3 would be in our favor because we can take with a queen. And if black does go for this forcing move with queen f5, if black does not go for queen f5, we're going to be playing bishop d3, castle short with a very nice initiative. So this is sort of forced, but we can just trade, play castles long, So knight f6, rook e1 check, bishop e6. Knight f4 is very strong, putting pressure on the bishop, and after knight b to d7, even better, start with bishop c4, with the idea that knight f8 is going to be met with bishop to d3, hitting the f5 pawn, and in case of king d7, side-stepping the pin, you can just push c4. White is getting really nice compensation in these positions. Turn knight g6, take on e6, play rook f1, avoid knight f4, and the idea is to push d5 next with a very good play for the bishop pair. So I think white has very decent compensation. And instead of taking on f3, playing the move a5 here is again something that black could consider, but we're going to be playing the same knight g5 idea, and after knight g5, knight f6 has to be played, but we can just take on e5 with the idea that queen takes on e5, we have a very cute tactic, we can play queen d8, and after the only move, king takes, we're going to be regaining the queen after knight takes on e5, and if black takes on f3, have even better move than recapturing, have castles long, offering another pawn, and black would try to play this super sophisticated knight g4 move, where it's actually like really important to play this rook e1 move, otherwise you might get in trouble. But after rook e1, white is keeping very nice chances to get an edge. For example, after rook e8, you can just take on f3, take on e1, and this could be actually close to equal, but I still feel like white has decent prospects with the bishop pair in the long run. And if after rook e1, black plays f2, you can just play rook e2, trade a pair of knights, and after knight a6, c4, opening up our b2 bishop, bishop d7, bishop d3, rook f1, g6, and after bishop d4, we will be suddenly picking up the f2 pawn while keeping the bishop pair advantage, which is very important in this type of open positions. So I think white still keeps a small edge here, but again, really important to just remember this rook e1 idea, because otherwise you might get in trouble. But again, this is very fresh stuff, so no need to be worried that your opponents will actually blitz everything out, knight g4 included. These are just some lines to give you a better idea of the bigger picture of how the lines could potentially go. So yeah. After castles, knight g4, we just seen what to do. Taking on g2 is possible, but we can just take. After rook e8, play c4, defend our knight, and after bishop e6, rook g1. The idea is to play bishop h1, and then we're having pressure on the g pawn with pretty nice compensation for white, in my opinion. So with that being said, we can move on to bishop b2. So instead of e5, black could also play the move knight to f6 in this position, and the idea is to play knight f2, introducing a threat of f takes on e4, and basically challenging black to push e3. If black plays e3, then we're happy to play a knight e4. We would be really satisfied if black takes on e4, because that would bring our pawn closer to the center. After pawn takes on e4, we can play bishop to d3. Here it's really important for black to push e5 himself, because knight e7 would allow castles, and after b6, queen e2, bishop b7, rook f3, just playing around that pawn on e3. The rook is coming to the h6 square with a5 ideas, and a lot of attacking potential. So instead of this knight e7 move, black is supposed to go for e5, and after e5, we're going to be making castle, and after bishop to e6. This is one of the very best lines that black has, and here I sort of came out with this a4 idea, and after this, the point is that queen b6, which was a big threat, we will be meeting it with bishop to a3. So now, for example, if the same queen b6 gets played, we can attack the enemy rook. After rook d8, we can play this queen e1 move. This is really important with the idea that after takes, this is again like very computation crazy lines, but white has a5, and the idea is queen takes a5, runs into bishop e7, which is winning material, and if black plays queen c7, then we can take on d4, and after rook takes, bishop b2 is very strong, and black has to come up with this c5 move to sacrifice the exchange, because rook to d8 is simply losing after a very nice queen c3, f6, and rook takes f6 move, with the idea that after pawn takes, queen takes, there will be a mating attack with rook f1 and queen h8 to come, and black has simply no counterplay to that. So black has to find the c5 idea to sacrifice the exchange. Then we can just take on e3 with a simply better position thanks to this really deadly monster on b2 that we have. So queen b6, a little bit of an inaccuracy here, so it's a bit better for black to play knight d7, where we should go queen e2, and after rook e8, we collect the pawn finally, and after knight b6, black is creating a positional threat of playing knight to c4, so we have to play queen e2. Here, if black goes knight takes on a4, I think that is the riskier move. I think it's way safer to play rook to d8 here, but yeah, some people might actually be tempted to take that one, but we would be happy to see that because we can play c4, and now we're threatening to push d5, so black has to play queen b6, hitting our b2 bishop, but we can just play bishop to c1 with the idea that if queen takes, we can play bishop e3, and we're gonna be collecting the knight on the next move because the queen is under attack. So after bishop c1, black is supposed to go knight c8. Here we have queen f2, very strong move. And if queen takes on d4, we have again bishop e3 move with the idea that queen d6 runs into bishop c5, and after queen d8, you can play rook a3, and all of a sudden the knight has no squares. So white is completely winning, and instead of that, black can take 1d4 with the pawn, which is much better. And after this, he needs to play e5, activate the bishop, and we have queen h4 idea next. Can beat any like h6 with bishop takes, with very good compensation for white. And I would really like to play this attacking position. So this should be it about this knight takes on a4. This is why I consider this to be like a little bit riskier. I think white is getting very nice attacking play. Rook d8 is a bit better and more solid in my opinion. Is the more solid alternative. So here we're going to be playing rook f to b1, and the idea is to just get this bishop to d2, and we'll have a threat of pushing c4. Black goes f6, play bishop c1, and black has to go for this queen takes on c3 move, and after bishop b2, queen a5, can take on e5, and now play bishop c1, and yeah, I think this should be objectively close to a draw, but I think white can try to play for a win if he really needs to, with like bishop d2, then maybe push once the queen moves, play bishop e3. If black is avoiding the repetition, we can push like a5 with nice pressure on the queen side with the rooks. So instead of knight takes on e4, again, this is what I think not so many people would play because it's improving white center, but I feel like knight e5 is a little bit more natural. This allows knight to d6, after knight d6, king e7. We have a very strong knight c4 move, attacking the enemy queen. Black plays queen a4. Here it's important to go queen c1, keeping an eye on this e3 pawn, after knight takes on e3, and after b6, it's important to first defend our c2 pawn with bishop to d3. After bishop a6, we can now finally take, and after knight d7, we can castle. We're a pretty complex position on the board. We do have the two bishops. Black has the choice to take on d3 and improve our structure, but with this king on e7, again, it's like a really complex situation. So I think there are chances for both sides. And instead of e3, black also has the choice to take on f3. And here I really like to go for this genuine idea, taking with a pawn. Again, this might look a little bit crazy. Taking with a queen is also fine, but I feel like black should be okay after queen f5 because I feel it like it's a better version for black here, and better version compared to what we have seen previously. And after g takes on f3, black is really supposed to break in the center with e5, because if black plays the normal looking castle, you can play queen e2, and things can go really wrong very fast for black. After rook g1, b6, we can castle long, bishop b7, queen a6, threatening mate, g6, can activate the rook, attacking the enemy queen. Now just play h4. Looking forward to play h5, bishop d3, just take, double sack on g6, and mate very soon. Also this rook can come into the game. So white has just a very deadly attack, I would say. So this is why black needs to break in the center in this position with e5. After this, can play queen e2, pinning the pawn. Black has to defend it, but now we can play rook g1, hitting this one on g7. Black can castle, but now we can castle on the other side of the board. And if rook e8 gets played, we have this super strong knight e4. If black takes, we can take with a pawn. And white has a very nice compensation on the g5. I think we can stop here. and also say that the pawn center is really annoying for black. Instead of rook to e8 move, black can also play e takes on d4, and after this, it's important to take, and after rook e8, just play knight e4, and we can meet g6 with h4, preparing to push h5. After queen f5, we can just play king to b1, really important move. Then it's another pawn sacrifice. After pawn takes, queen takes. Black is up 2 pawns, but it's actually white who is having the initiative because we can play bishop d3 followed by h5. And again, this king looks very lonely, and keep in mind that this bishop can open up any time after d5. So I just feel like white has very nice attacking prospects in this position. So with that being said, that is pretty much it about one of black's best lines, objectively speaking, which is this queen a5 move. And we can move on to what also got played against me a couple of times, which is knight f6. Here we can be taking on e4, and here black's best move is to go e5. But a lot of people are allowing this knight takes on e4, and they are allowing this queen g4 move, because after this, you can see that we're having a very nice double attack on e4 and on g7. And here there are many moves for black. I think I faced f5 a couple of times. Queen a5 is a move. Knight f6 is also a move. If black plays knight f6 to start with, we can just collect the pawn, meet rook g8 with queen h6. After rook g6, we can just go back home with the queen, and we're having the bishop pair while black is unable to find a safe place for his king. And instead of this, black would also after knight f6, actually this is pretty much it about knight f6, black would play f5, we can just take on g7, and after queen f6, again, we're fine playing the endgame, can go bishop d3, after castle, knight e7, have a very annoying bishop h6 move, and we can bring our rook into the game finally, with long-term pressure against the c6 pawn, can continue with like knight f4, bishop c4 ideas, and yeah, white just has a very nice play. Instead of f5, black would also try queen a5, as I said, but this is again like a little bit of a trickier move to find. Here, nevertheless, we can just go for the aggressive queen takes on g7, because after queen takes on c3, king d1, you can notice that this queen is not only attacking the rook, but it's also defending the vital pawn on d4. So after rook f8, we can just play rook to b1, and if black goes queen a5, we can play rook b3, keeping an eye on the c3 square. If black plays knight c3, we can just go king d1. Black simply does not have any useful discovery, as knight e4 will be met with rook to b4, and after knight to d7, can play bishop d3, hitting the knight, developing with tempo. Black plays c5, can just take. After knight takes, bishop to b5 is very strong, and after a6, we can retreat all the way back to e2. Black plays knight e4, can go rook f1, keeping an eye on the f7 pawn. Again, this is not really a first line, but it's a good illustration of how the play could potentially go. If black plays b6, you can just go knight g5, then knight takes, take with a bishop, black takes. We can go rook e4. It's really nice to be aware of this nice geometry that the white queen is still defending the a1 square, and this one is also covered by the bishop. So black doesn't really have any good moves, while we are also threatening to, by the way, just checkmate black here, because this threat of rook takes on e6 is quite deadly. So if black plays knight c5 defending against that, there is queen f6, and all of a sudden black is lost because he's unable to defend against our mating threats, dark squares. So yeah, not such a first line, but just remember that after queen g4, queen a5, you're fine with queen takes on g7, and if black takes on c3, you can play king d1, and after queen a5, I think you can just stop after the move rook b3 when you're trying to memorize this line. But the following line, I think it's still quite instructive if you're curious of how the game could potentially go. So yeah, that's about knight takes on e4, quite a dubious move. Time to move on to a better one, which is e5 here, which wasn't really played against me so far. But we can play knight f2, and after castles, play bishop to e2, rook e8. Now we can castles, because we have a really nice pawn sacrifice. If black does go for it, we can simply play the calm c3, and this is very similar to the Marshall Gambit fashion, with colors reversed, because the idea is to play like bishop to d3, and then go queen h5. And if black follows with rook e8, again bishop d3 is very strong. After bishop e6, queen h5, g6, This stops the checkmate threat, but it's weakening the dark squares. You can play queen h6 and meet queen e6 with bishop g5. And after 97, I really like a4. And we could play on both sides here with like rook b1, because black is unable to play knight b6 because of a5, and we can take on b7. And we can also advance our h pawn with ideas to double sack on g6 with very nice compensation for white. So yeah, that's pretty much it about the knight f6 move. And with that being said, I think we've covered most of the, I mean, not most, but all of the sensible alternatives. And now the only move that is left is the supernatural capture on f3. And this was leading to very nice positions for whites. This is a bit of a spoiler alert, but white is doing very well here. And we will see after queen takes on f3. Black has a choice between offering the queen trade with either queen d5 or queen f6. But the ultimately natural move is to play knight f6 in this position. So to start things off, we're going to be looking on queen to d3. Queen to d5. Sorry, not queen to d3. But here we will be avoiding the queen trade. Because now black is struggling to defend the g7 pawn. And after g6, we can just play bishop to d3. And black has already weakened himself on the dark squares. We can use this queen as an objective of an attack. We can castle short. And white just has a very nice compensation overall. Please look also that the c8 bishop is quite locked. So white has a lot of reasons to be better. Instead, knight e7 is a bit of a better try. Here we can just ignore the poison pawn on g7 by playing bishop to d3. Black goes e5. Now it's a much better opportunity to take on g7, because after rook g8, we can take on e5. And if black trades and collects now the g2 pawn, this is not really a problem because we can play knight f4. Please notice that the knight is under attack. And we can just play knight f4, attack the enemy rook. After rook g5. King f2 is very nice. The idea that after rook e5, a very nice compensation. The c4. You can play bishop b2, followed by rook e1. With very nice play. And if black does go for bishop takes on h3 instead, we can just collect. And after knight d7, play bishop f4 and meet knight e5 with bishop g3, defending the e5 pawn, giving away the c3 one. And if black takes, we can collect on h7. And after rook g5, I really like the king d2 move. Obviously, knight e4 is not a move because the bishop is covering that square. And after knight b5, we can just play rook to e1, defending our pawn. And yeah, white is just better because of the bishop pair. If black goes for the dubious capture on a3, you can just open things up with e6. And we have a big initiative against the enemy king. So white is much better. Instead of e5, black could also go for knight to g6 in this particular position. But we can just castle. And after castles, we have a very nice thematic idea. We can take on g6. And here, black should be taking from the center to the side by playing f takes on g6, because the normal taking towards the center is allowing a thematic attack after knight g5. We're threatening to play queen h4 and then mate. So black has to play f6, but then queen h3 is completely winning with the idea that pawn takes runs into rook takes, queen aj check. After king f7, the brutal bishop takes with rook f1 on the next move with a mating attack. So white is completely winning. If black takes the bishop, we can go rook f1, queen f8, and then rook to f7 with mate. So nothing really to discuss about this. So taking on g6 with the f pawn is better here, but we can still take on f8, play bishop f4, and after knight e7, go queen h4, attack the h7 pawn. If knight f6, bishop e5 is strong, threatening to eliminate the knight. So king g8, rook f1 is very strong, creating a threat of rook takes on f6, followed by mate on dark squares. And if queen e4, we can just take, and after queen takes, we will be up a clean piece. So yeah, black is really in a lot of trouble in these queen d5 lines after we play the important queen to g3 move. And instead of queen d5, black would seek for another endgame by playing queen f6. But again, I really like to keep queens on by playing queen g3. And if queen g6, then bishop g5 is a super annoying move, because now queen c7 becomes a very annoying threat, attacking both the c8 bishop and also threatening to checkmate on d8. As for example, if black would be playing the careless h6, you can just play queen c7, and we're already winning as early as move 11. So I think this is a really cute trap. If black plays f6, we can just go bishop to d3, hitting the g6 queen, and it's already very close to winning for white. So a better move would be to go queen e4. We can just go king to d2. Notice that the king is very safe in the center of the board. And after knight f6, we can eliminate the knight, play bishop to d3, after queen d5. Queen to g7 is super strong, hitting the rook, mate rook f8 with queen takes, and after queen g2, knight f2. Black is up a pawn, but we are currently threatening to play rook ag1, and then play knight e4, followed by queen h4, and then we will have deadly jumps with the knight onto the f6 square. So this is much better for white, and with that being said, we can now move on to what I think it's the most natural move in the position. This together with queen d5, I would say it's quite likely that you're going to be facing those two. In my opinion, maybe queen f6 is also quite natural, because really the Caro Kann players are endgame lovers. Myself was as a Caro Kann player, whenever I can trade the queens in the Caro Kann, I'm a very happy camper. So that is what I would be expecting. And knight f6 anyways, very natural move. We're going to be playing bishop to d3. In case of queen d5, the same theme applies. We will be avoiding the queen trade by playing queen d3. In case of knight h5, we can just play queen h4. After g6, we can castle with the idea to mid knight d7 with g4. Only move to fianchetto the knight, but after knight d7, can go queen h6, and black is losing material. King f8 can be met with knight g5 already, with a completely winning position. Instead of this, castling is a bit more natural, but then we can just castle, threatening to take on f6 because of the pin, and after knight e4, we can just play queen h4, hitting the knight. Black has to play f5, but we can just take, and after the queen takes, a really important move, bishop f4, threatening knight g5, completely winning because of it's attacking the queen, and also threatening to mate, so queen takes on c2 has to be played. We have this super nice rook lift, defending the c3 pawn, also preparing rook g3 ideas, and we have all kinds of bishop e5, knight g5, with a very nice attack for white. Please look and notice that the c8 bishop is unable to come and help black on the king side. So instead of queen d5, black also has a knight bd7 move, but that's not really changing much, since we can just castle and meet queen a5 with c4. And the idea is now that the hanging pawns are very powerful, supported by the bishop pair. Black can try queen h5, but again, we will be avoiding the trade, playing queen g3, followed by bishop g5, threatening to take on f6 twice because of the pin. And black can try queen g4, but again, just avoid the queen trade, and black is completely lost due to the threat of playing rook f4, followed by rook to h4. Instead of this knight d7 move, a bit more natural would be to just castle, but here white is getting a very nice play. For example, after castle shot, black can try to break in the center with c5, but then bishop g5 is very strong. If knight bd7 gets played, you can just go queen g3, threatening to play rook takes f6 actually, and then rook f1, and this is really deadly, because then we will have all sorts of queen h4 ideas, followed by taking, and then h7 is under fire. If black plays king h8, we can go queen h4, threatening to take on f6 twice, and then mate on h7. And if h6 gets played, you can just eliminate it, and then take twice, king g8, rook f3. Black is just getting mated with rook g3 on the next move. So again, this would be a very but this is a very good potential outcome for us, like this all like natural moves, and I think you can win like a lot of games by applying this procedures. So after castle shot, knight b to d7 is another move that black can go for. You can go queen g3, threatening bishop h6 ideas. If black plays b6, this would simply allow bishop h6, knight h5, can play queen g4, and after f5, we can just take, black takes on a6, bringing our rook to e1. It's enough here, attacking the e6 pawn. We also have knight f4, knight takes on e6 ideas, can collect the h6 pawn, but it's just completely winning in this position. After queen g3, a little bit more stubborn, needs to play knight h5, but we can just play this clever queen e1 move. And if black goes back, seeking for a repetition, now we're gaining a tempo. Not going to g3 this time, but all the way to h4. And with bishop g5 next, white is having a deadly attack. So instead of this, black would also play b6 in this position. But then we have this bishop g5 strong move. And after queen e8, we're going to be getting rid of the h5 knight by pushing g4, and after knight f6, we have a very nice instructive sequence. We can take on f6 twice, play queen h4, threatening to mate on h7. Only move to stop that is to push f5, but after check, we have another forced sequence. We can check and now play knight to g5, and there's simply no way to avoid this queen h6, queen h7 mate. Black can try queen d7, but then keep in mind that queen h6, the idea is to mate it with f6, but just don't be silly. Take on f5, and after pawn takes, king h1 is very precise, with the idea that queen d5 can be matched with the very nice bishop e4, and after pawn takes, you can play rook g1, black goes for the last check with e3, then we have this very classy knight f3, and we're mating black with a counter check, almost. You can still block it, but yeah, we'll be collecting anything that comes on the g file with a mate. So yeah, I think this is already quite a good illustration of how the game could go in these scenarios where we're going for this really nice knight h3 gambit. And I hope now you're feeling way more comfortable going into these positions, in case you have learned it via the move trainer. Now you checked out the video as well. If you haven't really checked out the move trainer, I really advise you to go there and practice, so you can get more familiar with how these positions are going, and you really want to get down the move by move, because it's really a pity to miss out on such good positions. And yeah, to sum things up against this queen d5, queen f6 ideas, just make sure to keep queens on the board. And to what we have seen a little bit earlier, if black goes e5, there's no really a lot of ways to avoid the endgame, but yeah, I mean, after knight g5, I just be okay here with that. As we just looked, after pawn takes, queen takes, we have analyzed queen d5. We've seen this knight d4 lines, and after f5, we're happy going into this endgames after pawn takes on f3. So yeah, it's just, I think this repertoire is like a nice mixture between positional lines, like you see here, where we go for the end games, for the long-term compensation, and really crazy attacking lines. So I think this is just a really nice way to play, because we have a very balanced repertoire, and this way I think it also helps us to develop as a player overall, because we are improving in more areas of the game. As you can see here, we're playing end games, and we're also playing tactical middle games. So I think this is quite a nice tool to have, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy these videos, and also make sure to stick to the upcoming chapters. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you there.